Hello, it is 2 o'clock in Germany right now, and this means our webinar about postdoc opportunities in Germany starts right now. And we have 1 hour now to talk about about your postdoc opportunities in Germany. And I would like to welcome all of you. Thanks for being here. Um, and also thanks or welcome to everybody who watches the recording afterwards. I would like to invite now our panelists to turn on their camera. And I am going to introduce our 4 panelists of today to you now. And before I do that, I would also like to explain what will happen now in the next hour. So first, there will be a short introduction. Then I will will ask you a short question about your career background, and then we will have almost 1 hour for the talk. And my camera picture is frozen right now. Now it works again. Sorry, I just was wondering if you can hear me, but I think you can. So and you will have the opportunity to ask questions in the chat, and I will go into detail about this a little bit later. And now I would like to introduce, just like I said, our panelists of today in alphabetical order. So we have with us Nana Gerlein, and she is advisor for international researchers at the Technical University at Munich, at the TUM. And she knows a lot about the administrative process at the TUM, and also some regulations like visa entry and those questions, very important questions, and she can give us some insights into that. Then we have with us Dr. Carola Lützow. She is a senior staff scientist and equal opportunity commissioner for her institute in Telfo. And she works at the Institute of Active Polymers at the Helmholtz Center Herion, or in German, if you speak a German, it would be called Herion. And she also made the postdoc at her institute, so she can also share her experience with us today, and also be like a testimonial for postdocs in Germany at a non-university research institution such as Helmholtz. Now I switched a little bit the order because it's not really alphabetical. Sorry for mixing this up. So the next person I would like to introduce to you is Dr. Björn Jahnke. He also works at the Technical University of Munich at the TUM Office for Research and Innovation. And he is the first contact point at the university and the central this TUM Forte is the first contact point at the university and the central coordinating body for any form of cooperation between business and research sectors. And he knows a lot about funding and about how to find a position for postdocs, for example, at the Technical University of Munich. Last but not least, I would also like to present to you Dr. Christina Wien. She is an advisor for postdoc funding programs, especially the MCSA scholarships and the scholarships of the European Research Council. And she advises international researchers at the COVI, which is an organization that is especially the main task of this organization is to inform international researchers about their research options in Germany and funding options. And of course, you can explain a little bit in more detail, all of you, what I missed to tell our audience right now. I'm sure there are many more things that you also can help our participants with. Thanks to all of you for being with us. We're looking forward to all the information you will have for us and for the audience today. So last but not least, I'm Anne Knapp. I will moderate this session today. I work for the DAD and also for Research in Germany. This is, no, here you can see the logo of Research in Germany. It's an information campaign by the German Federal Ministry of Research and Education. And our job is also informing international researchers about the opportunities in Germany. Okay, now I already talked a lot, and we will come to you now, and we are also very interested to learn in learning something about you. So we would like to know something about your current career stage, because just as you know, this webinar is about postdoc opportunities. So it's especially relevant for you if you're currently holding a PhD or pursuing a PhD, or perhaps also if you're already pursuing your first postdoc, then we will have information about the second postdoc. And as I see here, it's perfect that most of you, like more than 60%, are PhD students or in your first postdoc phase, and probably other perhaps could mean many things. Perhaps you're still doing your master's, then it would be planned a little bit ahead the postdoc stage, because before you have a postdoc, you usually do your PhD or PhD studies. Nevertheless, it might be interesting for you as well. So, but most of you are PhD students or postdocs, and that's perfect. So thanks for giving us that feedback. Okay, now before we really start with the questions, some last remarks from my side. You can ask questions in the chat, and I will answer or ask the questions to our panelists. I will not be able to ask all questions because there are too many people, and there will not be the time to answer all of those questions. And we will also not be able to answer subject-specific questions. So if you would like to know if you can do research in your field in Germany, we can show you where to find that information, but we will not answer this question for every research area that exists, because there's just not the time to do so. We will answer general questions more. Okay, and the first question, this is one of the questions that were asked already while you registered. And I would like to ask Björn Janke this, because somebody was interested in knowing, why should somebody come to Germany? So why? Why do a postdoc in Germany? Do you have some comments about that?
Yeah, I have comments about that. So I think so Germany, particularly in the last 2 decades, increased their scientific infrastructure, the scientific environment very much. So we have this Initiative of Excellence in Germany. Then some universities are selected for this, which increase their output in research, also the opportunities for funding. So I think Germany is a good place where a lot of funding is around for positions for postdocs, and also for a support structure for postdocs, like the DED also provides their interesting programs. And what is also particularly for Munich, and for TUM the case, is it's one of the top universities, meanwhile, and among the top 50 universities in the rankings in the world classifications. Yeah, and so I think it's more or less a hidden a champion in international research environment, where it's really worth to take a look, and particularly the technical sciences are worth to make a postdoc here. And in Munich or Bavaria also, we have the opportunity to provide many opportunities for getting work after your postdoc, and also getting into contact with industries which are very close related to the research you conduct during your postdoc, or even also during the PhD. So I think it's a really vibrant environment in Germany, so therefore it's definitely worth to go and come here.
Thank you so much, Björn. I mean, that were already so many arguments why somebody could come to Germany or should come to Germany for the postdoc.
Maybe I
it's
can
really
just add
motivating.
something.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you anyway to add, because we have to explain, Björn comes from or represents a university here, and you represent a research institution that's not a university, so perhaps you have also some additional information. So thanks for adding that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm from a center from the Helmholtz Association. Helmholtz has 18 centers, but within Germany, besides Helmholtz, you also have the Max Planck Society or the Fraunhofer Institutes or the Leibniz Institutes. So, and for Helmholtz, I can also say that we have received an increase in budget over the last years. That was a political decision to increase research. And I think whenever you find a suitable place, I think there are many opportunities for you within Germany, but of course you always may want to work in a very specific topic. And then if this topic fits, I think there are really good opportunities for you in Germany to work for.
Okay, thank you so much. Also for these additional information, sorry. And I can just only add, it is really the case that Germany is very much interested in international researchers. And this is, for example, also why the campaign or the initiative Research in Germany exists, because we're really looking for international researchers coming to Germany. And now that I hope you're all motivated now. The question is, of course, how to come to Germany. And there was a question in the chat that I will just read now. So this person is a student with a DAD scholarship in Germany in his second year, and he would like to learn about the requirements and procedures of application. Is it possible? Oh, I didn't understand the second part actually, but perhaps the requirement and procedures is something that will be relevant for everybody here. So perhaps it's also something that you could answer, Carola and Björn, from your point of view, from your organization point of view. So perhaps you could also answer this question.
Yeah, maybe I just reply quickly. So there are basically two possibilities of working as a postdoc at our institution. There are public job announcements, which you can check on our homepage. So all, so this means you have the possibility of choosing between getting money from our institution, and then this job will be announced publicly. And the second possibility is, of course, to kind of bring with you your own money, meaning getting a scholarship and then starting to work with us. And for as I said, the jobs are publicly announced, and then they're going through a specific process to give equal chances to everybody. And then people from the Equal Opportunity are also involved in this process, but of course, especially those people who announced the job.
Maybe I can add something here. At TUM, we also have a special program to attract postdocs to come to TUM, and this is the TUM Research Opportunities Week. It's 1 week per year. It takes place this year from 10th to 14th of October, and you are eligible if you are in the final year of your PhD or finished your PhD not longer than 3 years ago. And I can maybe briefly include here the link where you can look this up. It was published just today, actually, and the call is now open until the 17th of July. And then, you can apply. Up to 50 international candidates are invited to come to Munich for 1 week, visit also professors you want to work with as a postdoc. And then you are also eligible to apply for the TUM Global Postdoc Fellowship, where you get a fellowship for 2 years to have a real stay at TUM as a postdoc. So this is also a channel how to come as a postdoc to TUM.
Okay, thank you. I think I would also like to add something, and if Nana and Christina would like to add some information from your side, that's of course also just raise your hand. It's possible. So what I would like to add is that there is not something like a central database where postdoc positions are announced, but as you just heard, of course, the universities and the non-university research institutions have job announcements. And what you could also do is check first which institutions might be relevant for you. There are databases for this, just like the German Research Institutions database. My colleagues will post it in the chat. And at this database, so the JRID you see here in the chat, you can find institutions that do research in your field and then check their homepages if they have job announcements. Of course, you can also, just as Carola said, first find a professor. We will come back to that later, and convince this person to be your host, and then apply for funding. So if you go this way, you would always first need to convince somebody to be your host, and then only then you can apply for funding. And
Yes, I would
Christina
like
has
to add
something to add here.
that there's another
So go
funding
ahead, please.
database. It's called Eurexis, where you can find free postdoc positions on the European level. So Germany is a European member state, and if you wish to come to Germany, you could also check this Eurexis website as well. And there is a search option where you can filter to find only positions placed in Germany.
Actually, this is a very good website because it collects more information not only from one institution but from several institutions, right? So that's something, yeah, that's very useful. That's true. I have a question also. Would job announcements or postdoc announcements also sometimes be announced via the German, I don't know the English word, Deutsche Arbeitsagentur? Would that happen too?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay. Okay,
And
so
I think
there's
also within some journals, but
Mhm.
I cannot give you now the details. That
Okay.
changes.
But that was something I was asking myself. And then still talking about application requirements, as we're just talking about this now, and I saw a question in the chat, is if I finished my PhD more than 3 years ago, can I
I think
apply?
this was
So
supposed
does
for
it
this Research
matter when I
Opportunities
have
Week.
finished?
I think this the question was for this issue. Yeah, I
You
referred
think that
already to
referred
this.
to
Yeah.
the Research Opportunities Week?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not really sure. Perhaps it was also a general
Okay.
question. So perhaps even if not, we could
Yeah.
answer this in general. So are there limits to the application or to the eligibility when somebody finished the PhD? Does it
I
matter?
mean, I don't see this. I mean, there is a limit for people who are already or have been already employed in Germany because of this in German Wissenschaftsvertragsgesetz. If you had already a position in Germany longer than 6 years, it becomes complicated, unless you are financed by third-party funding. But so generally, I would say after 3 years, I don't see any problem to be getting employed as a postdoc in Germany.
Okay, thank you so much.
So I could add
Generally
an
speaking,
aspect.
I would say, sorry, I would say that there's not really a limit. For example, somebody could have maybe became pregnant. A woman could have become pregnant directly after her defense, and so. But of course, if you have to argue, and you have to keep in mind that you are competing with other people. So if you haven't been in research and don't really have a good reason, this of course is not so. But if you have the super qualification, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's something that needs to be said. Of course, it's a competitive job, and there needs always to be an explanation of why why this happened and why you're still an interesting candidate. Yeah, but there's not such a strict rule usually. So, but Christina, you also wanted to.
I would like to add that I think it depends on the funding. So when you are funded your postdoc phase through a special funding line, there are special rules for different funding lines. So for example, the European Commission has a funding program. It's called Marie Sklodowska-Curie Postdoctoral Fellowship Program. And to be eligible to apply for such a postdoctoral fellowship, you need to be in a time window less than 8 years of full postdoc experience. So to be eligible for this program, you need to have your PhD already, and you need to be in the time window less than 8 years of full-time postdoc experience. So this would be a criterion only for this funding line, but I think there are several other funding opportunities with their special rules depending on their funding philosophy.
Okay, yeah, that was also important. Thank you. Okay, then still, I think there's still some questions about the application procedure, so I will just read the next question. I think it's also interesting. At which stage of the PhD is it recommended to start looking for a postdoc in order not to lose time? So, who could answer the question?
Well, maybe I'll just start. If there's a job announcement, then this job is supposed to be, I mean, then there's a certain time limit, usually something like 4 weeks for applications. So this means you're either finished with your PhD or you're about to finish or have submitted already. But this is nothing which you can anticipate many years before. I think if you really want to organize, then this would mean applying for a grant. But I think my other colleagues can say more to that.
So I could add, especially for the European funding schemes, the fact that these European funding schemes have special calls, 1 per year. So there is nothing to have quick funding in this line. So these calls have a deadline, and until this deadline you have to apply, and then you have to wait more or less 8 months until you get a funding decision and you can start with your project in the case of a positive funding decision. And so if you would like to have an add-on funding after your PhD time for your first postdoc phase, it would be a good tip to think early about these calls, about their rules, about the deadlines to apply, and to also think about funding between this time when you finished your PhD and you would like to start your first postdoc phase. Because sometimes you have to wait until you get the funding decision. And so it is always a good tip to start thinking about these further steps at an early stage.
Thanks. That's also important to know. And I think perhaps now people ask themselves, how does it work to apply, or if it's only once a year and I want to be early when I'm still doing my PhD and I didn't finish it yet, and perhaps there are some outcomes that are important. So how does this work? Could I apply for a job announcement or for funding without having finished my PhD? And why? And how does this work? Is there something special I need to present something like this? Or isn't it that
So in the case
complicated?
for the named Marie Sklodowska-Curie Postdoctoral Fellowship Program, you need to have your PhD, so you need to have your diploma at the time of the deadline. So this is a fixed rule because you have to make sure that you are already in a position to work as a postdoc. And the host institution where you would like to work in the future, where you would like to carry out your postdoc phase need to take care about this rule. So this is a strict rule on the European level, but of course it would be a good idea to check all these rules and to prepare the proposal also in advance, even if you do not have your diploma right now. But you need to have it at the time of the application deadline.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarifying this. And that's something I can add from the viewpoint from the DAAD. If you really read the announcements carefully and really submit all the needed documents, this is already the first hurdle you will master then. And there are often people who don't read this carefully, and just because of formal reasons cannot be accepted. So this is also, it sounds simple, but it's really important also. Okay, and I think, we still have time to ask another, read another question concerning application, because there was somebody asking what is the difference if I apply for a research topic. So if you have a job announcement, is the postdoc topic or the research topic, is it already set? And I just say, okay, I want to do this, and I have to prove that I can do this. And otherwise, when I'm looking for my own research topic, it works a bit differently, right? So perhaps somebody of you could explain a little bit more the difference between those two ways.
I would say it also depends on the funding, what is behind this position. So if you apply as a postdoc at a chair, and you are very much involved into teaching, for example, and have a chair position, then it's different from being postdoc, let's say, in a collaborative research center. Because if it's a third-party funding finance postdoc position, then the shareholder already applies for specific funding for specific projects, and you have already a topic behind this where you really fit to and will do your research in this field. I mean, there's of course still some degrees of freedom to develop your career and your topic, but if you have a chair position, then I would say there's more degrees of freedom for you to develop your own research projects. It very much depends on the type of funding from my point of view.
Okay, thank you. That clarified it for me also. Are there any additional remarks? Otherwise, I would go to the next question.
Yeah, I would just support what Björn said. If there's a job announcement, and that job announcement either comes because there's a third-party project running, then there's a very specific work task. And if the postdoc position is being financed by the research money coming directly from the research institution, then there is also you're more flexible, but there's also a specific task which is being named and described, and you really, when you see a job application, this is something which I can say just from my experience, people should really, really read those job applications well. And you either meet those criteria which are listed or you don't. And this is something people should take seriously.
Yeah, I can support this definitely. So.
Yeah.
If you look for a position, I was recently 4 weeks ago. I was in Brazil and China for Brazil and Chile in South America, and they were very often the question asked how to apply for a position. And it seems that many looked just at positions and so provided tons of applications. And my advice was always be careful what is in the requirements for the positions and focus be more focused on specific positions you want to apply for. And you have to imagine that there are tons of applications for the professors. And if you have not an application that's really dedicated to this position, you have no real chance to be selected for an interview. So make sure that you meet the requirements, or that you make sure in your letter of motivation, make clear that your skills and your interest fit and really brings the added value to the chair who hosts the position.
Yeah. For example, I once had the situation where we got something like 200 applications for a job announcement, and only, I would say, like 4 or 6 people really met those qualifications. I mean, and I was really shocked, because in the beginning I didn't really believe it, and I went through all those 200 applications, and I was, I mean, there are some basic requirements usually stated in the job applications. I mean, not just saying, yeah, okay, I'm a chemist, but more specific criteria are listed, and these are usually expected.
I would just like to add that for the MSCA postdoctoral fellowship, the topic you would like to choose is totally free. So here you are in the position to define your research topic, but of course you have to find a perfect match between the topic, your qualification, the supervisor, and the host institution. And based on this perfect match, you need to write your application. And of course, there are many applications the evaluators have to check. And the competition is really hard. But if you have this perfect match, at this funding line, you are totally free to choose your own research topic.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying this to all 3 of you. I think it's really important to keep this in mind. And I would like to ask Christina, it's like this, correct or not? So if I apply for funding and I have the total freedom, I can do so. But first, before applying for funding, I need to have found a host,
Yes.
like you said, a perfect match. And only after having found a
Yes,
host.
for
I
the
can apply for
Marie
funding,
Sklodowska-Curie
right?
postdoctoral fellowships,
Okay.
you need to have a host, because in the end, the host institution need to sign the grant agreement with the European Commission, and you will get an employment contract with this host institution. But the grant agreement has to be signed with the European Commission and the host institution, and so you definitely need a host institution first. And at this host institution, you need a supervisor, and you have to give information about this supervisor and about the host institution during the application process.
Thank you. I think that was important to point out this as well, because this is true for every funding program that I know. And if you think about it, it also makes sense, because nobody would give you the money if you wouldn't not have a place to do the research. Yeah, you need to find a place for being able to do the research. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. Also, it's the same with every funding program, I think. So I know there are many interesting questions. I was also reading some of them. But now I think I would like to skip the topic to this topic of how to reach a professor, because we already discussed this a little bit, and I think it would be logical to come to this now. And there were also questions about this. So you already pointed out, all 3 of you, that it's important to find a perfect match. On the one hand, you have to show there's a job announcement and you are the perfect person for this. But also, if you have your own idea and you have a topic that you're really so interested in it, and you would like to do research in this topic, and you are looking for a host yourself, you also need to find somebody who is a perfect match. So a question that I read in 15 minutes ago already was, how can we convince a professor to answer us? So I think some people here already contacted professors but didn't receive a reply. So perhaps you have some do's and don'ts for the participants when it comes to contacting a professor. example, perhaps I can ask a question that sometimes also was asked when I was talking to people at career fairs, for example. Do I write a short email in the beginning or a long email? Because do I need to explain everything, or perhaps just some keywords? Is there a tip for that, for example? And how do I show that I'm the perfect match? Perhaps it's a bit difficult, right?
Yeah, maybe I can just start. Maybe the others can add it. So,
how did you do it, right?
Well, in my case, I really applied to a specific job announcement. But I mean, there are also possibilities of, for example, talking to people, meaning to professors or to group leaders on a Congress meeting. There usually people have time, so if you can get in contact there with people, and I think that's there one can really get a good impression. You can get a good impression of the professor or the group leader, and on the other hand, that person can also get an idea of you. So that would be a possibility. And I do know that professors and group leaders get a lot of applications, but I can hardly say which is the best way of writing. I mean, you have to convince somebody, but so I think you need to write a little bit more than just a short notice, but if you write an extremely long email, I think this is also something which is difficult. But you can always attach your CV. So if a person is interested just by your short introductory email, this person can just check your CV and then get a better idea if he or she has interest and time.
Yeah, I would also support this. And I mean, from my point of view, it's important also in this email, not too long, but also not too short, but to point out that you really fit to the interest, and don't copy and paste and send 30 times the same email to 30 professors. Yeah, so show that you are interested and aware of what the professors do, and what is the field of expertise and how you can complement to this field of expertise. And what we also had in the South America discussion was the question, what about an own website about my profile? And from my point of view, this is a good idea. Yeah, if you provide information about yourself, about your interest, and demonstrate that you are aware what the expertise of the professor is, and then maybe have a website where you can present yourself, your papers, your research capabilities. So I think this is also a good add-on to such a self-presentation email where you can get or raise the intention to your email. Yeah, this is I would say a good way to raise the intention for yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was already really helpful, and I would like to add that tomorrow we have our last webinar of this series on the topic of Ask a Professor, and for everybody who wants to go more into detail on this topic, how to contact a professor and how to receive feedback, you can also, I recommend to visit our webinar or to watch the recording, because of course there you can get the answer from somebody who is really in the position of receiving that many emails and answering it from their point of view. I could also add something that I already mentioned, the German Research Explorer, no, that's the wrong database. I meant the German research institutions, the GRID. There you can really find out which institutions in Germany are the perfect match for you, because you need to find the institution if you have project in your mind that fits perfectly, and that's, I think, one of the most important steps. There were some more questions. I will also touch the topic of the funding, of course. That's something we haven't talked much about yet. But perhaps last question that also was posted in the chat about the application, because I think it's a hands-on question. So, is there a good season for applying for postdoc, or may I apply anytime in the year? It depends. I can answer this also. It depends on the time, on the program, or on the application, right? But how is it for the Technical University of Munich? Is there a special season, or are postdoc positions around?
I mean, of course, we have in this, as I said, some specific programs where they are once a year, and there are fixed deadlines, and you should be aware of these deadlines, and be in time. But of course, there are job openings all over the years. And therefore, I think there's no specific season, but make sure that you keep the deadlines for specific programs.
So I thought that this was probably a hands-on question. That's easy to answer. Thanks. When we talk about funding, we also need to keep in mind, and that's something we probably need to explain, that there are different career stages within the postdoc phase. So usually we speak of first and second postdoc, and there are some scholarship programs that are for the first postdoc or for the second postdoc. Also, I think it's the same with the postdoc positions. And I think there also differ. There are different kinds of postdoc positions. Perhaps you could summarize this. I know it's possible to talk long about it, but perhaps one of you could summarize a little bit the career stages after the PhD in some words.
I can just say something concerning more the natural sciences or chemistry, which is my background. So if somebody is really interested in a professorship, this usually requires like 1 or 2 postdoc positions, and usually so after finishing your PhD, you would usually go for like a 2-year postdoc, international postdoc, and then in Germany, at least, if you would then, for example, come back to Germany, you would then go to work on something like your own, try to develop your own research topic, which is definitely a requirement in Germany for becoming a professor. And that's then would be called a Habilitation. There are different programs for funding, but I think that's at a later stage, so to speak. So I think now we're talking more about the postdoc positions when somebody is just like after the PhD, so the first postdoc.
Thank you. Okay, so are there any further comments about these phases, postdoc phases? Not really. Okay, so but just as Carola said, the postdoc in general is of course after the PhD, and it depends a little bit on the question if somebody is doing research in natural sciences or humanities, for example. But postdoc means usually just after the PhD and before the habilitation, and that's the years that happen between that. And of course, if you're more experienced, you get more responsibility. So in your second phase, you are usually, you can be a junior group leader, right? That's something that is common for a second postdoc, right? Okay. So I hope this explained it a little bit more detailed, but I can also say who wants to know this, who wants to know, for example, this a little more detailed than we can explain it here. We also have a booklet about postdocs from Research in Germany, and also, of course, a website or Research in Germany website. It's explained very much in detail. So time is running. I would like to quickly answer the question about the language skills. And of course, if you have to add something or would like to add something, you can do this. But this question was asked several times, and I think I just answer it from my point of view. So language requirements. You usually don't need it if the work language at your institution is English, and usually it is often English. So for the application for the job, you often don't need to speak German. It depends, of course. I mean, it depends what you're doing. If the working language is German, then of course you will also need to learn German before. But the research in Germany in the meantime is also very international, and there are many international jobs. That's why we also do this here, and we speak English with you. And in everyday life, it's also possible to survive without speaking German. But of course, it's always better to speak a little bit of the language, because not everybody speaks fluently English, and then it can be really helpful. And so this is a first answer to this. And the even shorter answer would be also check the job announcement, what they say about the language requirements. And this is but also a question I would like to ask Nana. Does it play any role for the application for visa when I need to apply for a visa? Do I need to prove some German skills? Or would I need to prove some German skills?
To be honest, I don't know that, because the question never rose in my so far 2 years praxis. So, but the fact is this. We come into the process when postdocs or guest professors already have a match at TUM. They already have a host at TUM. They are funded. They have or else they are employed by TUM. So we are totally not involved into the selective process. It might be possible. Most usually everybody I have contact with does speak English. Some speak German, but most only speak English. And I think from a professional point of view, you probably won't get very far without English at TUM. Björn, maybe you can tell more about this. But yeah, in fact, the question never rose in my practice, and anybody got so far a visa. So the language question doesn't really. It's so natural. It's so yeah. It's just a natural thing. It doesn't. There's no problem.
Yeah, I agree. So it's even more important to have a very good English skills, because English is the language of the science. You have to publish in English and go to conferences to communicate in English. So it's more important to have good English skills than to have German skills.
Actually, we
completely
have a lot
agree.
of postdocs
Yeah.
and guest professors who, of course, don't speak German, and at this point, we come into the scene and help them with, for example, German authorities who often in Munich who often don't speak well enough English. And in this in that point, we come into the scene and support, and it always works out. So you can come to TUM without any German.
I think this is true for all research institutions nowadays within Germany. And just as Björn pointed out, if you're a postdoc, you have to focus also on writing publications, and the language of writing is English.
I think so too, but I also know sometimes there are some exceptions. I mean, the obvious exception if you're studying German literature, something like this, of course you need to speak German. So there are some exceptions, but mostly really everything is in English. That's true. And just as Nana pointed out, there are help structures at your universities or non-university research institutions, yeah, who help you with finding, for example, also you say talking to the with the authorities or something like this, with the finding, would you also find helping accommodation or something like this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So you see there, if you don't speak German, there is also a help structures at your employer. So now, thanks for your feedback on this question. I think we now really need to touch the topic of funding because it's yeah, very interesting for many people here also. I'm afraid we can't answer that many questions that yeah. The other interesting questions will probably not be able to answer them. So the first funding questions I see in the chat is also again about age. I think many people have this in mind. So is there an age limit to apply for postdoc funding? Perhaps you can all answer it quickly from your point of view.
So for a job announcement, there is no official age limit.
Usually not, right? And for the
also there is no
ERC funding,
limit. There is
how
only
is it
this
in that
scientific age limit. So for the doctoral fellowships, you need to be in the time window less than 8 years of postdoc full-time research experience, but it doesn't matter how old you are individually.
Thank you. I think that's also the same for most of the other scholarships. And also, of course, if it's something that we pointed out before, if you're much older than the usual postdoc is, then it's always good to just explain why this is the case. And if it's a reason that's yeah, understandable, that's even more helpful for your application. So now I have to skip a little bit because I know there were many questions about scholarships. Okay, I just found a further question. Or perhaps, as we have, I think the best thing if you also could speak a little bit more about the ERC scholarships, Christina. I think that would be interesting. So how long is, for example, the funding period? And perhaps you could just say a little bit about the main facts about those scholarships.
Yes, of course. So I would concentrate on the MSCA postdoctoral fellowships because I think most of the attendees here are in this time window. So there is a deadline. The next deadline is in September. You can apply for, and for this you need to apply electronically via the Funding and Tenders Opportunity portal of the European Commission. This is the portal you need to use if you would like to receive European funding. And there is a guideline how to fill in your application. So there is a template. You only have 10 pages for your application, and there is a document called guidelines for applicants where you can read what you have to do. And when you check the template, you will see that there are a lot of questions the European Commission would like to ask you, and you have to find best answers for these questions. And if you do so, you write your application, you submit it until the deadline in September, and then you have to wait for more or less 5 months during the evaluation process until you get your feedback. And in the case you will receive money, your host institution has to sign a grant agreement with the European Commission. This will take more or less 3 months until they finish this process, and then you can start. So if you think about an application now, you have to calculate more or less 1 year until you can start with your project, and then it has a duration of 1 or maximum 2 years, depending on the project design you applied for. And you have the opportunity to add additionally 6 months after your normal postdoc project duration in the so-named non-academic sector. So for example, if you would like to carry out your postdoc project at the university, for example, the university in Munich, you can add 6 months after this maximum 2-year project duration in the non-academic sector to transfer your knowledge and your experience and your results to this non-academic sector. So for example, to a company where you would like to work in the future. So this would be funded too. So to sum up, in total, it would be 2 years and 6 months for a postdoctoral fellowship project.
Thank you so much. That was a really helpful answer, and I think it gave the participant a good overview. I think for those scholarships, also people can apply when they are already in Germany, right? And perhaps, perhaps you can say something about this.
They can apply if they are already in Germany, but they have to follow the mobility rule to be eligible for this funding line. And the mobility rule says that you have not worked and or lived in the country of your host institution within the last 3 years for more than 12 months. So if you are longer in Germany than 12 months, you cannot apply for a fellowship with a German host institution, but for example, with another European host institution placed in Italy or wherever. Or you say, I'm now placed in Italy, so in Europe, and I would like to move to Germany, and I was never been in Germany before, then you fulfill this mobility rule.
Okay, thank you. That was also important. Of course, we have also other funding programs in Germany from other organizations for, doing a postdoc in Germany. There is another organization, the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. They have funding for postdocs, and the German Research Foundation, they also have funding for postdocs. And we have, of course, all this information online, and also the DAD has funding for postdocs. So there are many more institutions. I just would like to point this out. And to find all these programs that might be eligible to you, I recommend to check a funding database called the Funding Guide. And there you will get a list of all funding programs for postdocs if you just filter for postdoc funding. Because there are, also sometimes small foundations that only fund perhaps one research topic. And I just wanted to mention this because when you're looking for funding, there are many places you can look at, and they all have different conditions. For DFG funding, it often they have many different funding programs, but usually you can also apply when you are already in Germany, because people were asking about that. But it just depends on the funding program. Each funding program has a little bit different conditions, and it's also here again important to read the instructions of the announcements. Like I said, time is running. It was so much fun to talk to you, and now we just have 3 more minutes to go until this webinar ends. So I think we need to sum it up now. Sorry for everybody whose question wasn't answered. Tomorrow there's a next chance to ask your questions at the Ask a Professor webinar. And now I would like to ask our panelists, each of you, a last question for your take-home message. It would be great if you could all give me one message the participants should keep in mind after closing this webinar. What is your take-home message? And I will start here just with Christina, and then Carola, Björn, and Nana. So please go ahead, Christina.
Yes, so I think Germany and Europe has great funding opportunities, and there are many people who can help you with the application process, and there are a lot of welcome centers, and we would be really glad to have you here in Germany. So take this chance and apply.
Thank you so much. And Carola, now it's your time for your take-home message.
Yeah, I would also highly encourage you to do your postdoc in Germany. I think I've explained to you that besides the universities within Germany, there are many possibilities also within the non-university research institutions. And we we have colleagues from all over the world, so join us.
Yeah, and also, okay,
Thank you,
sorry.
Carola.
Yeah, and also for
Sorry,
the
I think
Unix
there was a
side,
time
as I
problem.
said, so Germany has much to offer in research, but also in industries, opportunities to get your passion and follow your passion. And therefore, I wish you good luck and be really focused on the requirements and the possibilities that are requested and offered.
Thank you for this take-home message. And Nana, last but not least, I would like to ask you for your take-home message. Oh, you're muted.
Okay, in case you have found a postdoc position at TUM, the welcome services of the TUM Global and Alumni offices are very happy to support you there, but you have to register in with our database. The link to our database is on our website, which is linked in a list as well that you are provided with, and yeah. Keep that in mind. We need always a certain set of data to give you proper advice concerning residence permit, visa, and so on. So please register with us, or just drop us a line. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Nana. My screen is frozen now. I hope you can still hear me. I would just say thanks to everybody and waving goodbye for the case that you can hear me. Now I see you again. So goodbye, everybody. Thanks to the panelists.